You are standing on the walls of a city that will not exist by morning. The name does not matter. It could be Naissus or Serdica, or any of the dozens of Roman settlements that once dotted the Danube frontier like pearls on a broken string. What matters is that the walls are thick, the gates are barred, and you have told yourself for 3 days that this is enough, that stone and iron and the blessing of Christ will hold against what is coming. You were wrong. The first sign was the smoke, rising in thin columns along the northern horizon, like fingers reaching up from the earth. Then came the refugees with stories that made no sense.
They spoke of an army that moved faster than armies should move, of horsemen who rode without stopping, who seemed less like men than like extensions of their horses, as if some pagan god had fused beast and rider into a single instrument of annihilation. You did not believe them. Then the horizon turned black. Not with smoke this time, with movement, with horses beyond counting, spreading across the plain like a stain, like a plague. And at the center of that darkness rides the man they call the Scourge of God. His name is Attila, and by tomorrow, you will understand why they say the grass never grows again where his horse has trod. To understand what is about to happen, you must first understand what Attila is not.
He is not a mindless destroyer, though destruction follows him like a loyal hound. He is not a savage, though the Romans call him one. He is something far worse. He is intelligent. The Hunnic Empire was built deliberately by men who understood power in ways the comfortable bureaucrats of Constantinople had long forgotten. When Attila emerged alongside his brother Bleda to claim the inheritance, the empire already stretched from the Ural Mountains to the Rhine. You have heard the rumors about what happened to Bleda. For a decade, the brothers ruled together. Then, in 445, Bleda died in a hunting accident. No one believes the official story. What people believe is that Attila killed his brother.
That he looked at the vast empire they had built and decided it was not large enough for 2 kings. You will never know the truth, but you know what happened next. Attila began to conquer. The Eastern Roman Empire had grown fat behind its walls, convinced that gold could solve any problem, that tribute could buy peace forever. The payments grew larger each year. 700 pounds of gold became 1,400, 1,400 became 2,100, and still Attila wanted more. When Theodosius II finally decided that enough was enough, Attila showed him what the alternative looked like. The campaign of 441 was a warning. Cities that had stood for centuries vanished in days.
Viminacium was so thoroughly destroyed that archaeologists centuries later would struggle to find evidence it had ever existed. Singidunum was reduced to rubble. Sirmium, one of the 4 great capitals of the empire itself, was besieged and sacked. The Romans had always believed their cities were safe behind their walls. They had assumed that nomadic horsemen did not understand siege warfare. Attila taught them otherwise. The Huns had spent generations on the borders of civilized empires. They had learned. They had watched. When Attila's army arrived at a walled city, it brought battering rams, siege towers, engineers who knew how to undermine walls. It brought a systematic approach to destruction that turned Roman confidence into Roman despair. And when the walls fell, the real horror began. What happened inside a captured city was not random violence, it was policy. Attila understood that the true purpose of terror is not to satisfy bloodlust, but to communicate a message. Every atrocity was a letter written in blood, addressed to the next city down the road. The survivors were the message. Some were deliberately released, sent fleeing toward the next target, with stories that would spread faster than any army could march. They spoke of systematic execution, of populations lined up and butchered in the cold aftermath. They spoke of mass crucifixions, of victims nailed to the walls of their own homes. They spoke of the strange small man who commanded this apocalypse, whose mercy was rarer than gold, and whose anger was limitless. The Romans began calling him the Scourge of God. It was not a compliment. It was an attempt to make sense of the senseless, to fit this catastrophe into a theological framework. Attila was divine punishment, the wages of sin, the instrument of heavenly wrath. Attila was delighted by the title. He understood its power. He encouraged the stories, allowed himself to be transformed in the minds of his enemies from a mortal king into something darker.
There was a legend that he had discovered the Sword of Mars, a divine weapon buried in the steppes. When Attila took the sword, the god of war had chosen him. Fate itself was on his side. Attila did nothing to discourage this story.
belief in the sword, fear of the sword. That was worth more than any weapon forged by human hands. By 447, the Eastern Empire had learned its lesson. Theodosius agreed to Attila's terms. The tribute was tripled. Vast territories were ceded. It was not a peace treaty. It was surrender disguised as diplomacy. For a few years there was quiet. The Romans dared to hope the worst was over. They were wrong. Tribute was not an end for Attila. It was a means. The gold funded his armies, maintained the apparatus of Hunnic power. If the tribute ever stopped, he would need another source of wealth. And so he turned his eyes westward, toward the richest prize of all. He turned toward Rome. The Western Roman Empire in 450 was a shadow of its former self. Real power lay with the military commanders, and chief among these was Flavius Aetius. Aetius had spent his youth as a hostage among the Huns, had learned their language and their ways of war. He was called the last of the Romans. If anyone could stop Attila, it was Aetius. The two men knew each other. They had been friends once, but friendship meant nothing when empire was at stake.
The pretext for war was a woman named Honoria, sister of the Western Emperor. Condemned to supervise chastity after a scandal, she sent her ring to Attila as an appeal for rescue. Attila chose to interpret it as a proposal of marriage and a claim to half the Western Empire as her dowry. Did he actually believe it? Almost certainly not. But the excuse served its purpose. It gave him justification for the devastation he was about to unleash. In the spring of 451, Attila crossed the Rhine with an army that contemporaries struggled to describe. And it was not just Huns. Ostrogoths and Gepids, Herulls and Thuringians, a dozen tribes whose names are now forgotten. It was not an army. It was a migration, sweeping toward Gaul like a biblical plague.
The cities of the Rhine frontier vanished. Metz, Reims, Trier, reduced to smoking ruins. The Bishop of Metz was killed on the altar of his own church. The message was being written again. Then Attila reached Orleans. Orleans should have fallen. The walls were strong but not impregnable. The population watched the siege works rise and knew their fate was measured in hours. Then, on the horizon, appeared dust. Aetius had performed a miracle of his own. He had persuaded the Visigoths of Aquitaine to join forces with Rome. King Theodoric, who had every reason to distrust the empire, understood that Attila was a threat beyond politics. This was a time for survival. The Huns had already breached the walls when the allied force arrived.
Attila withdrew. For the first time in his reign, the Scourge of God had been forced to retreat. The aura of invincibility began to flicker. Attila could be beaten, but Attila was not finished. The two armies met on the Catalonian plains. It was the largest battle fought in Europe in centuries, perhaps 100,000 men, two massive hosts facing each other across a plain that would soon be carpeted with corpses. The fighting continued until nightfall. King Theodoric of the Visigoths died in the chaos. When night separated the exhausted armies, neither had achieved decisive victory. Tens of thousands lay dead between them. Attila spent that night preparing for the end.
He ordered a great pyre built, declaring that if the Romans breached his defenses, he would throw himself into the flames rather than be taken alive. Dawn came. Neither army attacked. Aetius, for reasons debated for 16 centuries, allowed Attila to withdraw. The great invasion of Gaul was over, but the war was not. In the spring of 452, Attila crossed the Alps into Italy itself. Aquileia, one of the greatest cities of the empire, was sacked with a thoroughness that left almost nothing behind. The refugees scattered into the marshes of the Adriatic, founding settlements that would one day become Venice. Padua was taken. Verona was taken.
Milan surrendered without a fight, and Attila established his headquarters in the imperial palace, seating himself on the throne where emperors had once sat. Rome itself lay open. There was no army between Attila and the ancient capital. What happened next has become one of the most famous moments in papal history. Pope Leo I traveled north to meet Attila in person. The details of their conversation were never recorded. Later legends claimed Saints Peter and Paul appeared in the sky, threatening divine retribution. The truth was probably more prosaic. Attila's army was exhausted. Plague had broken out in the camps. An Eastern Roman army was threatening Hunnic territory from behind. Attila agreed to withdraw.
He accepted a massive payment of gold and marched back over the Alps. Rome was saved. In the spring of 453, Attila took a new wife named Ildico. The wedding feast was celebrated with excessive drinking. The king retired to his chambers. The next morning, he was found dead in a pool of his own blood. The official explanation was a nosebleed. Drunk and unconscious, he had bled out without waking.
No one quite believes this story either. Some suspected Ildiko herself. Others pointed to the Eastern Romans, who had attempted assassination before. The truth died with Attila. They buried him in secret, somewhere on the Hungarian plain. The warriors who dug the grave were killed afterward, so that no one would ever know the location.
The treasures of a lifetime of conquest were interred with him, and then the earth closed over him, and Attila vanished from the world as suddenly as he had entered it. The empire he left behind did not survive him. His sons divided the inheritance and immediately began fighting. The subject peoples saw their opportunity and took it. Within 20 years, the Hunnic Empire was gone. But the damage could not be undone. The Western Roman Empire never recovered. When the last Western emperor was deposed in 476, just 23 years after Attila's death, the end had been inevitable for decades. And beyond the political collapse, there was something else, something harder to measure.
Fear. The generations that lived through Attila's time never forgot the terror. For centuries afterward, whenever a new threat emerged from the east, people remembered Attila. They saw his shadow in every horse-borne army. The Scourge of God had passed, but the scars on civilization's memory never fully healed. You are standing on walls that will not exist by morning. You understand now what is coming. You understand that your city is simply one point on a map that will soon be marked with ruins. You understand that the civilization you believed eternal is fragile beyond imagining. And somewhere in that mass of destruction rides a man who has made himself a god of ruin.
A man who has proven that everything humanity builds can be torn down, that every triumph is temporary, that every golden age carries within it the seeds of its own annihilation. His name is Attila, and the grass will never grow again where his horse has trod. The centuries pass, empires rise and fall, but the story survives. Attila did not destroy Rome. Rome destroyed itself over generations of decline. What Attila did was reveal. He pulled back the curtain on civilization's pretensions, exposed the weakness hidden beneath the marble facades. He showed that power built on complacency is no power at all. The Scourge of God was not the cause of Rome's fall. He was the symptom. He was the test that civilization failed.
And when you stand on walls that will not exist by morning, when you watch the horizon turn black with horsemen, you are learning the lesson that Attila taught. The barbarians are always at the gates. The walls are never as strong as they seem. And somewhere, always, there is a man on a horse who has decided that everything you love should burn. Remember that when the times are good, and the walls are strong, and the world seems eternal. Remember it when you forget to remember, because that is when he comes.